On this episode of ITAV, Wireless 6 is out and available. We talk about the Dante Virtual Card and getting training from switch manufacturers. All that and more. Next on ITAV.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is ITAV, episode 34, recorded Friday, September 20th, 2019. Virtually wireless.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by
Extron, industry-leading technology backed by world-class support.
This is ITAV, the monthly look at the IT and the AV space. My name is Tim Albright. I'm your host. With us to discuss the news and information that we have gathered for this month. First and foremost, Greg Mertz from HGA. Welcome, sir.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. Also with us is Mr. Michael Drainer from Drainer Technologies. Welcome, sir.
Hello, everyone.
So first story actually comes to us from PC Magazine. Wi-Fi 6 has officially launched from the Wi-Fi Alliance. Quote, unquote, the official launch of the Wi-Fi Certified 6 certification program, a promise of higher wireless speeds, reduced latency, improved battery life, and less network congestion, also some more bandwidth. Craig, I want to start with you on this. When it comes to new certifications like this and new capabilities in existing certifications and existing infrastructure, you guys started talking to clients. At what point do you start specifying this as a potential installation when it comes to new installations or renovations? When you guys are starting to talk to clients, at what point down this road do you say, yeah, you can start using this?
Basically, we start talking about using it when the standard becomes certified, which it did earlier this year. So the Wi-Fi 6 is actually 802.11ax, and that was certified as a standard. Now the industry knew or had very good ideas as to where that standard was going to fall, so they could start producing products before, or start building their products and designing their products before the standard was ratified. But once it's ratified or certified, that's when we really start to be serious about looking at deploying the products. Now, we obviously have to wait for the manufacturing industry and the vendors and to catch up and actually build products that are cost competitive or make sense from a cost standpoint. So I think, even though there are Wi-Fi 6 routers and access points out there now, we might, if we wait into next year as the industry starts to bring the cost of those devices down, that's when we get really serious about putting them in, recommending them to clients and putting them in there. But really, we wait on the standard to be certified.
Michael, Greg mentioned the fact that we got to start waiting on manufacturers. You used to work for a manufacturer, a couple of them, in fact. At what point should we start seeing those products? I mean, now that Craig mentioned the fact it was certified earlier this year. Now they're rolling it out. When should we start seeing products for this?
Well, that's always a wild card, right? So we're going to see the progression of vaporware first, right? It's going to be, hey, Wi-Fi 6 is here, and we're going to start rolling out our new products tomorrow. And you're going to see some companies that will start down that road. But we all know that the progress of R&D that goes into this, if the manufacturers are on their toes, they've already gone through the R&D process. They've already been working with the Wi-Fi 6 certifications in the documents prior to the official launch of Wi-Fi 6. So they know what's coming. They know what the industry is going to be moving towards. But I've got a bigger thing here with Wi-Fi 6, and that is the increased throughput. Theoretical top speeds in the neighborhood of 10 gigabits per second. I mean, that is stinking fast. And to bring 10 gigabit to the desktop today is an extremely costly endeavor. To do that through wired switch infrastructure, through cabling, NICs in the devices. And the ability now to bring 10 gig to the desktop in a wireless world where we don't need all this infrastructure is very intriguing to me. But there's still some major concerns because client expectations are now going to be, hey, we've got 10 gig, but the internet providers, we're still only delivering 1 gig to the prem in a lot of these companies. So now we're pushing 40 gig and 100 gig connectivity. So there's a lot of catching up to do yet. even though we can now deliver 10 gig to mobile devices and to desktops via wireless, we're going to have to really work to manage customer expectations as to what's really feasible here and what we're actually going to be able to deliver. So I say that to really go back to your original question. It's okay if the manufacturers take some time with this, because there's a lot of catching up that we need to do in managing those expectations, as well as the aggregated throughput on the in and out of these corporations.
Craig, one quick question.
Yeah.
Michael mentioned the fact that, this may fundamentally change how we wire buildings now. Is that possible where we are starting to maybe even pull away from wire all the way to the desktop, right? Or wire all the way to the projector, for AV installations, where we're relying more and more on the wireless infrastructure?
In some cases, I think the short answer is absolutely. We're already starting to see that in some cases, especially in the AV world, where we're starting to see digital signage players, media players, like having wireless cards in them, so we don't have to bring network to a digital sign. So we can, and that gives us increased flexibility for retrofitting, because we can put up, then we can put up devices in places without having to actually bring wires to them. Now, do I think this is the end of pulling network cabling? Absolutely not. But it does open up a huge opportunities for networking, and and AV essentially is operating over the network in the enterprise market right now. That theoretical top speed is huge, not just from a delivering bandwidth to a single user, but for aggregating that bandwidth across multiple users and being able to run more simultaneous users on an individual AP. So now we can throw more people at individual APs, give them better service. And on top of that, some of the additional features on Wi-Fi 6, like the scheduled check-in or the target wake time, allows us to bring, for that AP to essentially manage traffic, so that we can have more devices. But a lot of those devices that might be connected don't need to be talking all the time. So now, instead of the AP catching, unmanaged check-ins from sensors or from AV devices, now the AP will know when those devices are going to check in, and it can manage that traffic across the aggregate connection.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I think that's huge. That really opens up not just the AV, but the IoT world. And I think, it starts to really make it realistic for us to say, do we really need a wired jack at a desk or at an AV device?
And that's so critical too, talking about the time scheduling, because one of the things we have to deal with today is managing airtime, right? And a lot of folks don't understand it. They think of wireless as a frequency and a throughput, and how many devices can I have in it? But that device has to manage every single connection that's coming to it, every request that comes to it, whether authenticated or not. It still has to manage all that in its overhead. So the ability to schedule its IoT devices, to schedule clients that are intermittent use, is a really, really big deal, and that shouldn't be overlooked.
Yeah, I think it just adds it adds to what we can really expect from the wireless network, and it adds to the reliability of it. And that's really, that, as you mentioned earlier, is that the expectation, managing the expectation of the users and our client base, as well as, the reliability of the network, because that's ultimately part of what, where we fall back on the wired side is, even in conference rooms today, we're still going to clients and saying, yes, you can cast to your device, you can cast, in the room, but we don't want to eliminate that wired connection, because what if it doesn't work? You don't want to be dead in the water. You still want to be able to physically connect. So that reliability is big as well.
So let me ask a pretty dangerous question here. At what point do we stop pulling cable, or do we stop pulling wire, or maybe even enough wire? And here's the example. 10 years ago, I was a technology manager, and we put up a nursing facility. I was at a college, and we put up a nursing facility. And to the desktop, we had pulled 8 network drops. Understand? Okay, 8, right? And now some of them were for AV devices. Some was for PCs in the room, and for other reasons. Obviously, that number is going to reduce. That's going to shrink. Is there a point where even with your backup, right? So let's say that we have one drop pulled. Is there a point where that's the maximum, and we rely on everything else for wireless?
That's a really good question. I don't know if we're there yet, but perhaps we get there. There's always a question of security that goes into this as well, and what do you really want to do? I think it kind of comes back to that age-old answer of it depends. You know, what is the goal of what that drop is serving, or what that workstation, or what that AV device, you know, what is the uptime, what is the security that we need to maintain over that? Because I mean, you know, that's part. I think on the security side, that's a big side of it too, because with wireless, as much as we can, you know, do our best to secure a wireless network, we can't truly control where that wireless network goes. We can do that much more secure, you know, have much more control over that with a wired network. And, you know, we saw that initially with, you know, WPA3 and, you know, Dragon Blood, which was, you know, an attack that was ultimately patched. But, you know, that there's always that security risk. But I think we have to wait for Wi-Fi 6 to get in place and see how it works. Okay. And then you start to say, okay, I'm feeling comfortable with this. We're putting, you know, and this maybe sounds callous, but, you know, we're seeing clients that are putting in wired cabling and not using them. So now we start to say, okay, we have some research, or we have some examples of we've wired these buildings and they're just sitting empty because everybody's on wireless. So let's start recommending maybe pulling back on the cabling.
All right. Next story here comes to us from our friends over at Innovate on the Net. Dante, Audinate, has released updates for the Dante Virtual Soundcard for installation actually in virtual Windows environments like the Type 1 hypervisors. I want to start with you on this. The fact that they are rolling this out for availability into virtual machines is kind of interesting to me. First of all, real quick, briefly, a Dante Virtual Soundcard is it's a piece of software for those of us old enough to remember installing physical PCI cards into machines. That's what that does, only without the card. It allows you to put your audio on the network, and people, you know, that have Dante devices can pull it off there and this and the other. What does this mean, though, the fact that they're putting it in and making it available to virtual machines now?
There's a lot of possibilities with virtual machines. You know, I'm broadcasting right now on a virtual machine. And you wouldn't know that was the case, right? So we use VMs for many different purposes. We use it for desktop virtualization. We use it in multi-operating system environments. A lot of folks that use Dante on a regular basis have both a Windows and an Apple instance running on their machines for various purposes. We're seeing it used for centralized media servers, where we're putting them into Hyper-V in VMware environments, and the ability to stream information live. You're going to start to see aggregation services move to the virtual environment in the corporate space as well. So this is the natural progression of the way things are going with audio and video anyway, right? It's just that continual merger of the AV and the IT space. And for us to be able to play in, for us as AV professionals to be able to play in the us as IT professional space, we got to be able to work within their infrastructure environment. And that is within that hyper-converged space.
Craig, same kind of question here. Is Michael right where this is just another step in the merging between AV and IT?
Yeah, I think it's a natural progression, as Michael said. You know, as AVs moved into the IT world, you know, we've seen, you know, IP distribution, but we've had boxes that connect the AV to the IP world. So that next step is now we just move fully into the virtual world, and, you know, we don't need the boxes anymore. And I think that opens up, you know, even more flexibility and more opportunities to, you know, do different things with AV to decentralize it and to put what the services that you need where you need them when you need them, without
and
having
that's everything from control processors to DSPs to, I mean, it's where it's going. We've already seen manufacturers like QSC move to a server-based ecosystem on the QSys platform, and they will be launching a virtual environment at some point in time. The big issue that we see here is the latency, right? And managing that latency and dealing with the multi-protocols. So for instance, we just got done talking about Wi-Fi 6. When am I going to see Dante multicast capability over Wi-Fi 6? Is that even feasible at this stage of the game, right? What's that?
6 months. I mean, honestly, and I would expect 6 to 9 months. And here's the reason why. ISE 2020 comes your way in February of 2020. I would expect some sort of announcement based on the fact that the certification is out now and they have access to it. Who knows? Maybe it's ISE, maybe it's Infocom next year.
Right.
Yeah. All right, very interesting. All right, guys, last story here comes to us from over at Sound Communications. Netgear has announced the introduction of a new engineering support center for commercial AV integrators, available to quote-unquote AV installers, consultants, manufacturers, and resellers. It is designed to streamline AV over IP solutions and eliminate the complexity of AV deployment. Craig, we'll start with you on this. We've had an awful lot of conversations about networking today, and we'll end with this one. Is something like this where a switch manufacturer, starts offering up their expertise and their assistance to you, to Michael, to the technicians that are putting together these systems? Is that helpful, or is there a certain sense of well, you're a switch manufacturer, so your training is going to be a little bit more on your stuff, or is it legitimately valuable?
I think it absolutely is valuable. There is a certain amount of maybe some latent concern that well, as a consultant or a designer, are the manufacturers trying to play in this world? But no, I personally welcome more input. That what you mentioned is a double-edged sword. They are a manufacturer. They do have a very specific perspective on which they are looking to do. They're looking to sell gear. So you absolutely need to take their design support and whatever they're saying with a grain of salt, if you will, because it is going to be focused on their perspective as a manufacturer and getting their gear into the project or into putting their gear out into the world. But it's helpful because they know how their gear works, but at the same again, that grain of salt is at the same time they possibly might be sugarcoating some of the things that some of the pitfalls you might run into. So you still have to be on top of it. You can't. I guess ultimately, while it's helpful, and I want to hear what their in-depth knowledge of their gear, their perspective is, you also have to understand the overall bigger picture so that you can relate that to your client, and you can take that and realize that they may not be fully forward with absolutely everything. So you still need to be on top of your game.
Absolutely. Michael, same kind of question. When you were training as a manufacturer, how were you able to make sure that you absolutely brought value and brought information, but also made sure that the company that you were working for was also served?
I told the truth all the time, 100% about every aspect of the design. And that's what they will always tell you. No, in all honesty, anybody who's doing this with integrity will be forthcoming about the shortfalls and the weaknesses. Craig's absolutely right, though. They do have an agenda. Their agenda is to sell product, right? They're always going to try to design around the capabilities and the shortcomings of their product. And we did the same thing in multiple manufacturing environments. I will say that this is a really strategic move for Netgear because my largest sales came through consultative training. It came through taking that load off of the engineer that was responsible for designing these systems and to be able to provide him or her those additional resources. So this is really, really good move for them to be able to do this. But Craig is right. Take it with a grain of salt. Be analytical about it. Understand that they are designing around their ecosystem as any manufacturer would be. I mean, Tim, you've been in major trainings with other manufacturers, and it's always drink our soup, drink our Kool-Aid, everything, our ecosystem. But we've all been in this long enough to know that there is no one-stop shop for absolutely everything, and realize that going in, that take the education, I like to equate it this way: eat the watermelon, spit out the seeds. Is really the best way to approach this.
Yeah, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with having that perspective. If you're offering up something, nothing, you don't get anything for free in this world, So that's, if they're going to give away the training and they're going to, or give away the design services, they need, there has to be a caveat that comes along with that. So, and they have they're in business to make money, and this is a move to make money. So, it's just, you have to be knowledgeable and, understand that bigger picture.
Yeah, I will say that it's an interesting move, and it's a good one for them, as they're kind of positioning themselves as this AV over IP expert, because I don't see Cisco doing this, right? I don't see other switch manufacturers saying, we got the AV over IP, let's talk to you about it.
They don't have to, right? I mean, the market share of some of these other manufacturers is so huge that this AV space is a microcosm to them. Right, and Netgear's on an upward rise. They're making an intentional decision to try to move more and more to that corporate space, and if they can position themselves as the experts in this field, then they're going to get those micro segments where it makes sense, and they're going to start to erode away little by little at the big guys' market share. So it's.
See, I would argue that let's pick on Cisco because it's Cisco, right?
Yeah, well, you can pick on them all day.
Yeah. But I would argue that they almost have a responsibility to even, yes, I understand that in the bigger scheme of things, the AV industry segment of their business, talking about switches here, not talking about the former Tandberg and their VC stuff.
The who?
Shush. But a responsibility to the folks that are utilizing their gear to push these signals through, helping those folks and bringing the education to them. I think that they have a responsibility. Now, whether or not they think they have responsibility is a whole other issue.
Right.
Which is why I think the move by Netgear is very interesting and good for them.
And I agree with you 100%. Any responsible manufacturer, I don't want to use that word. You should take the time as a manufacturer to try to bring that level of education. But again, it's when you talk to any CIO today, right? How much of their headache comes from AV versus the percentage of their budget? It is very, very small in the grand scheme of things. Now they have big headaches around it, but it's a very, very small piece of their overall ecosystem. So they don't pay a lot of attention to it until it rears its head. And that's where these little problem solvers come in. It's like, yeah, no, Netgear doesn't fit in our ecosystem. It doesn't fit into our corporate standard. Let's isolate it, shove it off over there to the side and just make it work. Make this go away. And that's what Netgear's doing for these guys.
Yeah, and I think, from the Cisco standpoint too, is if as a manufacturer and you want corporations or organizations to use your product wholesale, then I agree with Tim, where you have to then support everybody that you want to be using your product, even no matter how small. But you're absolutely right, Michael, where that does offer what we've called a wedge service, where they kind of wedge themselves in, and maybe the CIO start to see, oh, well, look at this Netgear product has these features that I like better than this other, what I've been using across my enterprise. So maybe I should start looking at using that more, and they can gain some market share that way. So it is a very strategic move.
Very good. All right, guys, that is going to do it for us today. Mr. Michael Drainer from DTI. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
How do people get a hold of you?
DrainerTech.com is the best place. You can also find me occasionally on Twitter at Michael Drainer.
Very good. Craig from HGA. Thank you, sir.
Thank you again.
How do people follow you? Yeah.
Find me on LinkedIn at Craig Murtis and HGA.com.
Very good. For us, for AVNation, go by the website, avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv. You will find this program and a host of others, including our 2 weekly programs, AV Week that looks at the commercial side of the AV industry, and Resi Week that looks at the residential side. Also, while you're there, check out our supporter section. These folks who help us financially, help us bring you IT, AV, and all of the other shows. All that and more at avnation.tv. AVNation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. That's all the time we have for IT AV.